Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. Let's just jump right in, because we are digging into a seriously fascinating source text today called Shielding the Sensitive, a guide to energy vampires. Listen, if you've ever felt completely and totally drained by certain people in your life, this text actually breaks down the biological theories behind exactly what's happening to you, and more importantly, how to put a stop to it. We're going to unpack the specific claims and the methodologies this guide lays out for understanding and protecting your energy. The guide actually kicks things off by asking us to think about a super relatable question. Why do some interactions leave you physically exhausted? I mean, you know the feeling, right? The source describes it incredibly vividly. You might chat with someone for, say, 30 minutes, but you walk away feeling like you literally just ran a marathon. Your shoulders suddenly feel incredibly heavy, your breathing gets shallow, and your mood just noticeably shifts. And then, to make matters worse, you might even start blaming yourself for just being too sensitive. But here is where the text makes a really critical pivot. It states absolutely unequivocally that this feeling of drain, it's not a personal failing. It's not just a metaphor, and it is definitely not a sign that you're weak. The guide actually links this exhaustion to measurable shifts in your neurophysiology. So the core thesis here is that you are sensing something very real that other people just miss, and this energy extraction is a literal biological, neurological reaction. So, to unpack all of this, here's our roadmap for the explainer. We're going to cover 1. The science of depletion, 2. 6 types of vampires, 3. The empathy vulnerability, 4. Physical and emotional costs, 5. Strategies for protection, and 6. Reclaiming your sensitivity. Let's get into it.
Starting with Section 1, the science of depletion, the neurophysiology of exhaustion.
To really grasp this, the source first defines the sympathetic nervous system. Think of this as your nervous system's gas pedal. It kicks in when you perceive a threat. So your body actually thinks you're running from a bear, when in reality, you're just standing there talking to a coworker. In a healthy conversation, your nervous system naturally alternates back and forth between activation and rest. But according to the guide, when you're around chronically dysregulated people, your nervous system gets stuck in that active mode. You stay hypervigilant, just bracing for their next emotional explosion. Now, what's totally wild is how the text applies the concept of mirror neurons. These are those specialized brain cells that fire when you observe someone else, which is what allows you to feel empathy. Well, according to the guide, in highly sensitive people, this system is hyperactive. So you don't just intellectually understand that a person is angry, your nervous system is literally absorbing that chaos as if it were your very own. And that brilliantly illustrates what the text calls the empathy depletion effect. The research cited here outlines a very specific biological chain reaction. Step 1 is empathy absorption. You are taking on their emotional state. Step 2 is sustained activation. Your body is now working totally in overdrive, trying to manage that state. And then step 3 is the measurable consequence, a massive cortisol spike. Your stress hormones shoot up, your mental resources get completely depleted, and you're left totally exhausted because your empathy got drained without ever being replenished. Moving on to Section 2, 6 types of vampires, a clinical taxonomy. The guide specifically identifies 6 major types of these so-called energy vampires. They are the emotionally dysregulated, the narcissistic, the victim, the boundaryless, the energy hoarder, and the chaotic. The text uses these exact terms to really help sensitive folks pinpoint and recognize the specific dynamics of the people in their lives who are draining their emotional resources dry. So, how do we make this actionable? Well, the text actually maps out a specific, tailored boundary for each of those unique vampire types. For instance, it advises an empathic boundary for the emotionally dysregulated, meaning you strictly limit the time you spend with them and refuse to regulate their emotions for them. For the narcissistic type, the guide's recommendation is no response, enforcing those boundaries with absolutely no debate. And for the victim type, the strategy is compassion without responsibility. You refuse to take on the guilt, but you can point them to outside resources. Section 3, the empathy vulnerability. Why you are targeted. Okay, so this is a crucial point. The text argues that your very best traits are actually your most exploitable vulnerabilities. It lists things like having an exceptional capacity for empathy, high conscientiousness, and a strong tendency to avoid conflict. Sensitive people also tend to have a habit of internalizing blame, right? Plus, they have this deep, deep desire to just see the good in everyone. And energy vampires, whether they're doing it on purpose or completely unconsciously, they sense these traits. They know that your conscientiousness means you're going to feel super guilty if you don't step in to help, which effectively turns your own beautiful qualities into a leash. Section 4. Physical and emotional costs. The measurable toll. The source separates the aftermath of these interactions into two crystal clear categories. First, the physical toll. We're talking immune suppression, terrible sleep disruption, tension headaches, and of course those cortisol spikes we talked about earlier. Then there's the emotional toll, which involves profound self-doubt, resentment, anxiety, depressive symptoms, and just overwhelming guilt. The text reinforces a really vital truth here. This exhaustion is absolutely not just in your head. It is a highly verifiable physical and emotional depletion. Section 5. Strategies for protection. Empathetic Boundaries. The guide offers this incredibly powerful internal mantra: I care about you and I need to protect my own energy. That one quote really captures the source's whole philosophy. Protecting yourself does not mean you have to suddenly become cold or just stop caring about people. The text is super clear that boundaries and empathy are not mutually exclusive. You can care really deeply about someone's pain while simultaneously just refusing to carry that pain for them. To actually put this into practice, the text outlines the exact anatomy of a clear boundary. It's a pretty rigid 3-step framework. First, you state the limit. Exactly what will and will not happen. Second, the reason. And this is why it matters to you, not to justify it to them, but just for your own internal clarity. And third, the consequence. What exactly happens if that boundary is crossed? The guide emphasizes that this has to be clear, it has to be strictly enforced, and it is completely non-negotiable. On top of that, the source provides a really cool chronological timeline for regulating your nervous system. 5 minutes prior to an encounter, you do breathing exercises to just calm your baseline down. At minute 0, right during the interaction, you use physical grounding techniques, like literally feeling your feet flat on the floor, to help you stay present without absorbing their chaotic energy. And finally, 1 hour post-interaction, the text recommends actively discharging that physical activation. Go for a walk, do some movement, or take a warm shower. It's a literal step-by-step biological defense strategy. Finally, Section 6. Reclaiming your sensitivity, your greatest asset. The text hammers home this really critical distinction. Understanding someone's pain absolutely does not equal taking responsibility for it. Sensitive people have got to clearly separate their natural sense of empathy from this artificial sense of obligation to go in and fix other people's lives. The guide compares setting these boundaries to the airplane oxygen mask rule. You know, you have to secure your own resources first, otherwise you won't be able to help anyone else, and you'll completely lose yourself in the process. Which leaves us with this final, genuinely provocative question drawn straight from the text's closing argument. Will you let your sensitivity be exploited, or will you fiercely protect it as your greatest asset? The guide makes a really forceful case that the world actually desperately needs your sensitivity, but only you can protect it from being drained. So start building those boundaries and protect your energy. Thanks for joining us for this explainer. We'll see you next time.